Well, that crash happened much more quickly than I thought it might. Give everybody a chance to get back in here. Sorry about that, my computer sucks ass. The chat box got all screwed up too. Hey, sorry guys. That threw a wrench in everything. Sorry, I need a new computer. Okay, let me put this back. Okay, copy that. Gonna remove that. Paste. I didn't save my settings. Probably because I pushed. I sound fine though, right guys? It looks fine on the monitor. Okay, starting. Okay, if you just got here, computer crash, stream cache, getting back on it. We were chatting about... Hi Mike! Yeah, I know, it has been a long time. I've been busy and distracted, and I'm glad to be back though. Okay, so we were chatting about eating disorders. Aaron, you asked about eating disorders, about bulimia and anorexia and how to address them. So, like I was saying, eating disorders occur when the body downregulates the metabolic rate in order to help spare nutrients and to avoid over-consuming nutrients in environments and conditions where retaining nutrients is more profitable for the long-term survival of an individual. And this comes from our evolutionary history, wintertime and famine. And interestingly, one of the factors that actually enables this feature in humans like ourselves is that is our I don't know if you're familiar the fact that humans and some other animals like other primates and guinea pigs and fruit bats, we do not produce our own vitamin C. And this has always been kind of a mystery to people, to scientists and researchers and biologists, because it doesn't really make sense. Like vitamin C is such an important nutrient. It's really weird that we don't produce it ourselves. But I came to learn through my research that it is an adaptive survival trait, because vitamin C actually increases the metabolic rate. And I talk about this in my book in the chapter on like thyroid and immunity, that vitamin C helps to liberate mitochondria from the inhibitory influence of hydrogen sulfide, which is oxidized by glutathione. And that causes an increase in the metabolic rate to occur. And so if you produce your own vitamin C, you constantly have a high rate of metabolism. But if you don't produce your own vitamin C, during times when you are nutritionally stressed, like when vitamin C is not available in the environment because it comes mostly from plants, or entirely from plants, I should say, that naturally down-regulates our metabolic rate. So our inability to make vitamin C actually promotes better survival during nutrient deprivation. And so then, unfortunately, this adaptive feature, though, actually also makes it easier for people to starve themselves, such as when you're dieting or engaging in excessive, training and physical exercise to be skinny, or then also if you have like dietary behaviors like anorexia and bulimia. The lack or absence of vitamin C in the diet helps the body lower the metabolic rate so that you can then survive on a much reduced caloric intake. And so then, unfortunately, it makes it seem like dieting and starving yourself is an okay behavior to engage in, when in fact, it's still extremely detrimental to the body. Whenever you avoid calories and especially carbohydrates, your stress hormones rise. And stress hormones are highly debilitating to our metabolic health. And it's why people who have very long-term eating disorders eventually start losing their hair, and you'll lose the muscle on your body and become very emaciated. That is the effect of the stress hormones trying to prevent you from dying due to insufficient caloric intake. So eating disorders like anorexia and bulimia and stuff like that. And I want to be clear too, and I realized this during my writing and research of my books, that any dieting is an eating disorder. I think it's really unhelpful to consider anorexia or bulimia as something other people have and we don't deal with, but then we diet and exercise though all the time, right? To be skinny and to lose weight, we'll just cut out carbs. That isn't normal behavior. No other animal on the entire planet purposefully avoids food in order to be healthy. And some animals that do purposely avoid food, like for instance, mother octopuses, when they brood, they don't eat the whole time they're caring for their eggs, and then they die at the end of it. All dieting is an eating disorder. All dieting is types of anorexia, where you believe, first of all, especially because of motivated and informed by traumatic experiences, that dieting is not only okay to do, but good for you. And then that is facilitated by our biological survival mechanisms that help us to actually persist through nutrient deprivation, to our detriment, though. Because it makes it seem like it's okay or that you can do it. And really it doesn't, though, too, because as soon as you start dieting and stuff, and your stress hormones make you feel really uncomfortable. They make you, adrenaline rises, and that makes you feel angry. And cortisol rises, and that makes you feel irritated and anxious, and nervous. And, so many important healthful factors in our body, like hormones, are made from cholesterol, which is made from dietary fat, and glycoproteins, which are made from protein and sugar. And then so you don't have those in your body if you're actively starving yourself. And because our culture is so oriented toward, quote unquote, I'm doing air quotes, you can't see me, health and fitness, with these ridiculous obsessions of being sexually attractive, and I'm sorry, there's nothing wrong with wanting to be sexually attractive. The obsession with it is wrong, is bad, and unhelpful. And in this culture that we live in, that preaches starvation as a route to being sexually attractive, we think that dieting isn't an eating disorder. We think that it's practicing discipline. But in fact, it is an eating disorder. It is not normal for an organism to purposely avoid food like that. Yeah. If fish do contain vitamin C, then why were seafaring people deficient? I've never done research into that, but I can't imagine that fish have as much vitamin C as fruits and vegetables. Do they? And also, though, I mean, when you say seafaring people, I don't think you mean like Polynesians. I think you mean like, English sailors. Because they like English, like the English and French and Spanish, they very frequently suffered scurvy. I've never heard any information if, say, for instance, like Polynesian seafarers suffered from scurvy or not. English, European seafarers, they didn't eat mainly fish. They ate like potato biscuits. I mean, and potato even does have like vitamin C in it, though. Actually, and hardtack. Have you ever heard what hardtack is, though? Hardtack is this really rock hard type of wheat that's you take wheat and you make it into like a porridge and bake it into like a really thick hard cracker, and it's a way to like store and transport grain that's much more resistant to spoilage, and it has absolutely no vitamin C in it at all. And they ate mostly things like that, potatoes and then hardtack, and then as you ran out of potatoes and vegetables, you were like left with only like hardtack. And I don't think that they were like trawling nets along the boat the whole time. They were just like eating the stuff that they brought with them on the boat. And then yeah, that's why when they discovered that citrus prevented scurvy, they would pack the boat with like citrus fruit once they made that discovery, and then they didn't have scurvy after that, as long as they didn't run out of those. Yeah. So eating disorders usually occur when it is a time of the year or conditions replicate times of the year, like winter time, when naturally our torporific hormones rise and your metabolic rate drops as a natural survival adaptation to the changes in season and sun, which are triggered by the composition of sunlight during that time of year. Or it can be replicated by just never going outside too. That can also do it as well. And then on top of that, you likely have a stressful environment where, say, your parents or loved ones aren't actually very supportive of you, and you feel lots of pressure. Hi, Ian. And that stress contributes to this, because I think I was saying this before we crashed, that like when you feel isolated as a human being, your stress hormones also rise from that stress. So the combinations of these stresses induce severe states of torpor, wherein it is much easier to actually go without hunger. Because, for instance, if we were a wild human animal and we encountered wintertime or a famine, and your hunger was so intense, it can get to a point where you don't even feel motivated to go out and search for food. You just will literally just sit down and die because the pain is so bad. And stress hormones, being steroids, they function in part to help mute those hunger issues so that you don't feel so bad, so that you are able to actually function in spite of your severe degree of hunger. And that's one of the reasons why dieting and starvation and eating disorders can be perpetuated, is also because of the effect of the steroids that rise in response to the calorie deprivation in the first place. I used to do this all the time when I was like younger. I would wake up in the morning and I wouldn't eat breakfast, because if I skipped breakfast, I wasn't really that hungry in the morning. I could therefore theoretically cut out quite a bit of calories out of my day. But the reason that you wake up and don't feel that hungry is for that same reason, that stress hormones help to anesthetize your hunger impulses so that you aren't completely debilitated and unable to actually go out and get food and resources and provide for yourself. So we'll wake up and we'll go to work, and drink our coffee, but all the while you're being sustained by your stress hormones, your glycogen stores are completely annihilated, and your metabolic rate is tanked. And when I was recovering from cancer, I found, and this was before I discovered the solution to the Warburg effect. This was back in 2015, 2016. I realized that part of the reason I wasn't making very much progress was because my blood sugar would fall so rapidly, so much throughout the day. And I had to have a proactive plan in collecting and carrying and taking food with me to work in order to supply myself with adequate calories and nutrients, so that I could keep my blood sugar sustained all day long. And I had so much food too to do this that I had to buy myself a backpack. And I'm like this like 36-year-old guy. I mean, you know, guys with backpacks look hot anyway, so it's fine. But like I'm like this 36-year-old man that's like coming to work every day with a backpack, and everyone was probably thinking that, oh, like my, you know, maybe it has his workout clothes in there, or, you know, books. I mean, not books, but like you know, stuff for work or whatever. And no, it was literally just full of food. It had I would make a fruit smoothie every morning, with a between a half cup or an entire cup of sugar. And I mean, this is a big fruit smoothie. I'm 6'7". Like this was, hi bears. This is a major. Oh, and also, sorry guys, I am seeing your questions, so I will get to them. I just tend to like be very long-winded, so I'm sorry. You'll have to excuse me for that. So this was like I had a blender, and I would fill the blender to the top with fruit, sugar, juice, or milk, and protein powder. And then I would drink some of that in the morning as part of my breakfast. And then I put the rest of it into a giant thermos that I would take with me. And then I had like bags of dried fruit and nuts and chocolate and candy, like really high quality taffy, you know, things that I found at the good stores. And or I'd even bring my leftovers and my lunch that I would eat. So like literally like my backpack was like full of food when I would bring it to work, and it would be empty by the time I would leave work during the day. And part of the reason for that was because I couldn't really eat a lot of restaurant food around where I worked. There weren't really great restaurants. And so I had to prep and take a lot of food with me so that I ate better and had better nutrition. And so anyway, but none of that is the solution to these eating disorders. None of what I just said is, but one of the primary factors is vitamin C availability. If you eat plenty of vitamin C foods every day, and very often the problem too with eating disorders is that you really don't feel like eating, and then you feel pressure to eat, and then that pressure just stresses you out too, and you don't even want to deal with it. You don't need to actually eat food. If you even just drink food, that would be plenty, and that's oftentimes more accessible when you have these problems. So for instance, if you just start every day drinking orange juice or grape juice or apple juice, if you just do that, it has enough vitamin C and sugars and other nutrients, and fructose is one of the primary drivers of metabolic respiration. A lot of people don't know this, but nearly all glucose that cells take up is first converted into fructose before it is metabolized into the citric acid cycle and into mitochondrial respiration. It is not true that fructose is bad for you. There is a lot of context and nuance to how fructose is consumed, and factors that affect it, talked about in my book, that really do influence sugar metabolism. But just plain fructose itself is not necessarily harmful. For instance, fructose always accompanies glucose in nature, and your body will not absorb fructose if there's not also glucose present. So studies that just feed mice a whole shitload of fructose will end up showing negative health effects from that, just because that's not how any of our physiology works. But anyway, so if you use good, healthy, natural sources of these things so fruit juices, very high in vitamin C, very high in fructose, those help to raise your metabolic rate really effectively. And then what happens is, because you activate your metabolic rate through just, eating some, drinking some nice yummy juice, that then starts to trigger your hunger impulses, so that you feel naturally motivated to eat food rather than trying to force yourself to do that. Then there's two other factors too that help a lot. Excuse me. Getting sunshine, because sunshine liberates mitochondria from several inhibitory factors that help to lower the metabolic rate. Just going out and getting sunshine can also raise your metabolic rate. And then also supplementing a low dose of niacinamide. You can also use niacin, but you need to use very low doses of it. Niacinamide you can use. Hi, Jamal. I've been talking for too long. We're getting backed up on the questions here. so I'll try to wrap this up. Anyway, and then also, if you take niacinamide daily, like with, say for instance, that juice that you take, that will even further raise your metabolic rate, and then you'll start naturally being ravenous, and then you'll feel literally biologically stimulated to eat food, in opposition to your trauma and perspective on your body and diet. And then in addition to that, then you also, Aaron, need to eat or need to do inventory therapy. Your self-worth and your body image is contaminated and corrupted by experiences of trauma growing up, where you felt unloved and not supported and stressed out and maybe not attractive and rejected by people, including romantic interests and stuff. And sometimes too, we can even be mistaken about what people can reject you for reasons that have nothing to do with how you look, or they could be in a depressed status themselves, or they could be interested in somebody else, or all these other reasons. And then we as humans will concoct all these other things in our head that we think maybe is the reason, as a defensive mechanism and survival mechanism, and then we act on those experiences that inform our decision making and our behavior. So you have to really overcome eating disorders, you have to do inventory therapy so that you can work through that trauma to learn where your self-worth really originates, which is not in other people's opinion of you. I've seen criticism of my work in places where people complain that my work might make people fat, and oh no, God forbid, more fat people. I mean, what the fuck is your problem? Fat people are fine. People don't need to be skinny to satisfy your neurotic control and coping mechanisms about the world and life and your own self-esteem, right? Other people's issues are their own, and there's nothing wrong with being fat. Being fat is a protective, adaptive survival mechanism that helps our body survive nutrient and pathogenic stresses. Most fat people are colonized by very harmful, very destructive parasites, oral bacteria, viruses, and people that aren't fat and are colonized by those pathogens are more likely to die than fat people, because fat serves as both a reservoir for calories, although that's not its major purpose, but more importantly as a insulator against heat loss, because heat is one of our most important metabolic resources. And so fat people are more likely to survive catastrophic health developments than people that don't put on fat, for that very reason. Fat is your friend. Your body loves you. Your body is just as interested in you surviving as you are. And so to characterize fatness as something that's harmful to anyone is a symptom of unresolved personal trauma and really toxic considerations about where your self-worth comes from, which should not be based on other people's opinions of you. So yeah. Anyway, so inventory therapy really, strongly helps to re-educate your unconscious mind as to how to find confidence, how to love yourself, how to be more effective in your life, and how not to act on fears and insecurities that can motivate harmful behavior like starving yourself. So anyway, yeah, that was a really long explanation. Sorry. So we'll go back up the list, way back up the list. Let's see. Ian asked, am I familiar with Grant Genero? No, I'm not. He's the guy who thinks vitamin A is killing us. His blog on scurvy is very interesting. Oh, yeah, vitamin A, toxicity people are weird. Like a lot of health things, it's based partially in truth. So it seems to be true, and there's, and they can justify a lot of that stuff. But there's so many things in our body that run on vitamin A, all your hormones, your thyroid function, immunity, mitochondrial biogenesis is literally regulated by vitamin A. So if you avoid keratins and vitamin A and stuff like that, your mitochondria start to become scarcer, and you produce less metabolic respiration. I mean, it's just such basic fundamental principles of human biology that stuff is just ridiculous. Yeah. But scurvy is a real problem though, actually, because like I talk about in my book, ammonia producing microbes actually cause vitamin C deficiency. Even when you're eating plenty of vitamin C, vitamin C becomes unstable and gets destroyed in an alkaline environment. So as you lose, and a lot of people don't realize this too, the stomach actually secretes ascorbic acid during digestion. And so as the stomach increases in alkalinity due to ammonia producing parasites and H. pylori and others, it actually causes vitamin C deficiency because the stomach secretes it during digestion. And so then as you age, and especially and vitamin C deficiency is reflected. One of the symptoms of scurvy is bleeding gums, rapid tooth decay, and gum loss. And that is a symptom and is part of vitamin C deficiency caused by pathogenic colonization, which is why most people with metabolic disease present with oral disease and gum disease. So yeah, vitamin C is very important. Any tips for iron overload? Yeah, ferritin over 1,000 from excessive red meat consumption. Yeah, well, first of all, Bears, I'm sure if you're still here, sorry, it's been a long time since you asked that question. I'm sure that you probably have cut back or stopped eating a lot of meat, which is a really good idea. Drinking tea every day. Tannins help to bind and capture iron. Also, you can take riboflavin as a supplement. And there's a lot of weird people in our sort of orbits where they'll talk about things like iron overload and say you shouldn't have like spinach because it's really high in iron. But all of the iron that's in spinach is non-heme iron. And then they'll turn around and say, oh, you should eat liver. And liver is like, I can't remember the exact amounts, but it's like 10 times the amount of iron that's in spinach. And almost all of it is heme iron. And heme iron is the most bioavailable form of iron. So to like recommend people take liver but avoid like high iron vegetables is one of the dumbest things that can come out of your mouth. Like you will get way more iron excess from eating liver than you will spinach. And the things in spinach like oxalates and tannins, there's not very much tannin in spinach, but the also bind and help prevent iron absorption anyway in the first place. So having you don't have to worry about plant and vegetable sources of iron, but except for all iron fortified foods like common wheat, which also are very toxic and very hard and bad for you because you're basically just eating iron shavings when you eat that. So avoiding those high sources of iron is really useful. I was reading recently in a study on diabetes about how iron excess in the pancreas causes spontaneous excessive collagen synthesis that chokes off blood supply to the pancreas and contributes to diabetic symptoms. And I think the study said that all diabetics present with iron excess, and generally you can see too that a lot of diabetics have very high diet, or did when they started getting the illness, that they have diets high in meat because heme iron is the most bioavailable form. And the problem is that iron isn't necessarily bad for us. It is exploited. The excess is exploited by the pathogens that cause diabetes and other illnesses. So yeah, iron excess is iron excess, especially because so much of our food supply is fortified by iron added to flour and rice and other grains, is one of the primary drivers of the massive systemic metabolic disease that plagues every industrialized country. And if we got rid of iron fortification, so much of it would just evaporate over the course of the next 5 to 10 years. Not all of it, of course, but a lot of it would. So yeah. But yeah, so having tea and other high tannin sources like nuts that retain their skins, like hazelnuts and almonds. Naked nuts do not have tannin, so you need to have the skin on there. Those teas and nuts and fruit juices and olives, anything that's high in tannin, especially taken with food, will bind to iron and help to prevent more absorption. So that helps a lot too. And and then you can take a riboflavin supplement, which will really help your body detoxify the excess. Aaron, whenever you make an effort to eat more, you just get a lot of gas. So gas is specifically a symptom of B12 deficiency, which is a symptom of deficiency of Thyroid archaea. This is not established science. This is from my work and research. Most of our B12 supply comes from archaea called Thyroid that are the most ubiquitous B12 producers in the environment, and they occur everywhere from ocean water to your mucosal tissues. and they are in turn dependent on vitamin D. And we share vitamin D with those Thyroid, and they produce B12. And then the B12 helps your other microbes adhere to indigestible food substrate, like fiber and other insoluble carbohydrates and stuff like that. And so when you don't have vitamin D and B12 and Thyroid, they can't do that. And instead, methanogens get a hold of that food, and then they produce a lot of gas. So it's a symptom of vitamin D deficiency, B12 deficiency. And so the steps to reverse it are in my chapter on gut health, and getting your vitamin D normalized. Mike, belly fat is not resolved for you. Yeah. You're prone to overeating and snacking. Your thyroid is not a factor as when I was hypothyroid, but the issue remained. Yeah. So, Mike, that's just a very common response to being colonized by opportunistic microbes. First of all, those microbes steal a lot of our nutrients, so you have to eat more food to make up for it. Secondly, they disturb the normal gut microbiome and its function, so you don't digest food as efficiently. And then secondly, they also stimulate that condition also stimulates more fat retention. And then your other tissues still need their nutrition too. So you have this, so the condition causes a massive depletion of, or maybe like, I should say like efficiency from a normal diet. So you then end up having to eat more in order to make up for all of those variables. Actually, like I just mentioned with vitamin D and Thyroid and B12, that's one of the major pathways that helps to establish and facilitate a very healthy microbiome that reverses that situation where they eradicate opportunistic pathogens, increases their ability to digest food and produce the B vitamins and short chain fatty acids that they make that we're dependent on. So so then you get more efficiency out of the food that you eat, and then that promotes greater mitochondrial respiration, along with the factors that manage that. And for instance, Mike, too, like for instance, so like when you have metabolic disease and your cells, your mitochondria do not respirate properly, you produce up to 18 times less ATP, which is our primary energy molecule, than is typical. Those are not absolutes. It's up to and most. So very well-functioning mitochondria can theoretically produce up to 36 molecules of ATP from one single molecule of glucose. That is an incredible rate of efficiency. But when your mitochondria, let's say your mitochondria weren't working at all, that glucose is metabolized instead in the cytosol through glycolysis, and that only produces 2 molecules of ATP. So 2 compared to 36. That is the energy differential between a very good working metabolism and microbiome and stuff compared to one that's not. And neither the good state or the bad state will be those absolutes. It'll be a range in between there. So for instance, like a healthy person maybe only produces like 30 ATP molecules per glucose, and then a sick person maybe doesn't produce just 2, maybe they produce like 6, or something like that. And conversion to pyruvate in the cytosol happens much more rapidly than oxidation of carbohydrate in the mitochondria, but because it is so inefficient, it then overconsumes carbohydrates, so that you have to eat more carbohydrates to produce far more hey Epic, someone just said my mic is muted, but I've been talking the same for a long time. Can you guys hear me okay? It would be weird if it was muted and I've been talking for like an hour. Can you guys hear me? I think you can, because you guys have been responding as if you do. Okay, thanks, Jamal. Yeah, okay, good. Someone typed to him that he's probably muted. Okay. Hello, Shamar. Thanks, Epic. So, okay, so also because my stream always has technical errors, so I was like, fuck. Okay, so So you produce you produce so much less ATP in your cells that are not functioning effectively, that you then crave, you need and crave more calories in order to produce the same amount of ATP than someone who is healthy, who can produce up to 36 molecules of ATP per molecule of glucose. So Mike, that's what happens when you have like quote unquote overeating. You're not overeating. You are eating according to your body's needs because your body's telling you that it's hungry. That means you need more food to like produce more energy, or to produce the same amount of energy that someone who is fully healthy would produce from a lesser amount of food. That's why this is one of the most ridiculous things about the whole calorie aspect of quote unquote health and fitness, is that calories are not the same from person to person. One person can produce 36 molecules of ATP per molecule of glucose, and the other person can produce only 2. 1 calorie is not the same in every single person. It depends on how your metabolic health is working. So when you feel like you have to eat a lot of food in order to feel satiated, it means that your metabolic pathways for the production of energy are not working as efficiently as they should be. So then a lot of people will try to deal with that by starving themselves and avoiding food, but you need to continue eating in order to supply your body with energy. And the proper course of action instead is to address the pathogenic microbes that have taken up residence in your body and in your gut. So anyway, but Mike, I don't have a specific recommendation for that. You need to address your gut health, your immune system, and your hormone system, and your thyroid, as discussed in all those chapters in my book. And get sunshine. Jamal, yeah, your last comment on Patreon. Can we talk about high dose iodine? Oh yeah, I did see that, but I didn't have time to answer actually before I started stream, so I haven't yet. But this is a great place to answer that. So, high dose iodine, and when I say high, I mean yeah, like 25 to 50, 75, 100 at the most, never more than 100 a dose. And anyway, and you don't even need like higher than 50 really. Any more than that can be harmful. High dose iodine should only ever be used like an antibiotic. If you use high dose iodine chronically, you risk keeping your microbiome suppressed, and that's not useful. So never use high doses of iodine chronically. If you use them high, like it's like an antibiotic. If you get sick or you don't feel well, you can take a high dose once or twice, and that's it. But using but Jamal, I think is a good. You pointed out a really good disparity between that commonly exists in everyone when you're trying to get better. You went right from having no iodine to I should overdose on it. And you haven't yet tried the moderate option, which is just to have a little bit every single day, which is the norm, which is what you should do. Jamal, I think if you have a drop of iodine in, like put just 1 drop of iodine in like a carton of grape juice or whatever, something that you use all the time, and so that you get a little bit of the dose every single day. And so you end up with like, let's say maybe like 300 to 500 micrograms of iodine per day. That'll help you a lot. That'll be really great. And then if you're consistent with that, you will see thyroid improvement over time. Whereas doing the high dose is really unnecessary. And that woman that you quoted that did that, and I took high dose for a long time too. And because I was so sick, it did help me, but it also suppressed my gut microbiome, which I wasn't aware of at the time. And so you don't need to do that. And so she probably saw benefit from that because of its antibiotic effect in the function of the immune system. But if she was still doing it after that, she was probably experiencing symptoms of excess. And also too, I get people once in a while, I get people that might, criticize me for recommending high iodine, because there are a lot of studies that show that high iodine use can interrupt thyroid function, but those are not, they're not in context. And also whatever high means also is also, relevant to that kind of a debate. And so, and those range the entire gamut. And regular iodine supplementation does not cause thyroid disease. Other factors cause thyroid disease, like high polyunsaturated fat intake that increases the susceptibility of the thyroid to peroxidative stress. If you're not getting enough dietary cyanide, and then people will say that inhibits thyroid function, and that's not true either. Studies that show that quote unquote cyanogenic goitrogens in the diet inhibiting iodine uptake by the thyroid only does that if you're deficient in thyroid, and if you're deficient in iodine, and as soon as you add iodine, that stops happening because it doesn't work like that. Like the thyroid takes up iodine, it's fine. But yeah, anyway, so it's all contextual, and and the problem is a lot of studies also just are not very good at understanding those things either. So it's very confusing, and people have lots of differing opinions, and there seems to be a lot of contradictory evidence. Anecdotally, for instance, there was somebody I was helping a while ago whose wife had Hashimoto's thyroiditis, and from my research, I found that dietary cyanide participates in the immune system just like iodine does, and chloride and the other halogens. And that people that have Hashimoto's need to do the opposite of what they're told and eat more dietary cyanide and brassicas and stuff like that. So I told him to tell his wife to do that. He reported to me many months later that not only had she not done that, she had doubled down on her avoidance of the goitrogens, and all of her numbers got worse. Like exactly what I said, but in the opposite direction. That the opposite, that she by avoiding goitrogens, her Hashimoto's numbers plummeted and got even worse. So that this is how it works. You need to be sufficient in both iodine and dietary cyanide sources like brassicas and almonds and yucca and stuff like that, and not excess in either, and just like normal amounts, and then that will help a lot. But unfortunately, if you that are listening that maybe have not read my book might not be aware of, iodine is supposed to come from our diet, and usually does normally if you have a normal food system, but tilling the soil, actually iodine is actually volatile, and when you till soil, iodine soil content volatilizes to the atmosphere and literally evaporates. And so like goitrogen problems that are in a lot of places are actually caused by agricultural practices, and not because of natural soil iodine deficiency, but because most of our food systems are actually deficient in iodine. This is the entire reason that salt is widely iodized, is because the agriculture is so low in iodine, but it's from tilling, not any other dumb reasons that people propose. You do have to actually actively supplement it if you have any health problems, because the amount that's in the salt is not even close to enough to help. So yeah, but yeah, you don't need like huge amounts. Yeah, Jamal. Okay. Melinda, you read about altruistic egoism in Hans Selye's book. Have I heard about it too? I have not. Sorry. That sounds like a oxymoron, altruistic egoism. That just sounds like somebody trying to justify their arrogance or selfishness. I don't know. Sorry though. I don't know. I really don't know, Melinda. I haven't heard about that, so I can't say. Aaron, I think you mean I think you mean sunbathe. Whenever you try to sunbathe, you get easily burned and reddish. Aaron, I mean, I'm assuming, Aaron, that you aren't like redheaded, right? Because like redheads are like, you just, as a redhead, you just have to like very limit your sun exposure to very mild exposure. If you're not like redheaded, you're not like, like a way northern descended person. Sunburning is a reflection of high skin polyunsaturated fat content. Probably from the diet, but the skin does also itself produce polyunsaturated fats from good fats. Because when good fats are in a very hot temperature, they become liquid and can be easily transported through biological pathways. But when temperatures get colder, the saturated fats and stiffer, more stable fats, they solidify. And so if our body did not possess the ability to actually actively desaturate fats, those fats get stuck in the skin, in the cells, and can't be moved out. And in fact, this is actually what causes styes and chalazions that happen in your eye. it's actually through low body temperature and zinc deficiency, because you lose the ability to actually desaturate fats, and then palmitic acid and stearic acid and all those other fats, they actually literally get stuck in cells and in pathways and can't be moved out. So when you Aaron, when you have eating disorders, your body temperature plummets dramatically. So your skin increases the synthesis of polyunsaturated fats in order that your skin can stay alive. But polyunsaturated fats are more easily oxidized and irradiated by UV exposure, and sunburn and sun damage like that is almost 100% a function of the polyunsaturated fat content of skin. And so as you increase your metabolic rate and your eating and fix those problems, your body temperature warms up as measured by the pulse and temperature diagnostic that's in my chapter on self-therapy. Then your body will produce less polyunsaturated fats, and in the meantime you can put coconut oil and or shea butter on your skin before you go out in the sun, and that will help a lot. So you don't need sunscreen. What I would recommend is that you just don't get sun exposure during times and durations that you would get burned. Limit it to weaker sun exposure, like early morning, later afternoon, and shorter time periods, so that you don't get sunburn, because sunscreen just blocks vitamin D synthesis, and you need it. You need that. That's one of the points of getting sun. Just don't get burned. And then if you use coconut oil on your skin, that can help block a lot of the sun damage. But also, Aaron, too, you could maybe also be deficient in vitamin D production. Vitamin D actually captures a lot of the energy that is in sunlight. That's one of its functions. It actually is a way for our body to harness sunlight energy into a biological pathway. Similarly, carotenes are highly important for resistance to sun damage in your skin. This is why the whole thing on vitamin A and carotenes is so dumb, because our primary resistance to sun damage in the skin is actually facilitated by carotenes. So if you don't eat carotenes, you will be more likely to sunburn. Carotenes in plants absorb and discharge sun energy, and they do the same thing in our skin. They prevent your skin from absorbing DNA damaging UV rays. They absorb it instead, and then they discharge it in vitamin D production and other stuff in the skin. So that could also be a reason that you sunburn really easily. But yeah, cold and dry. That's what. I didn't see that. Here's the second one. Particularly when you go have a sun bath, some of your skin is cold and dry. The dryness is a problem of fat metabolism and body temperature, because of the low metabolic rate and eating disorders. So get those under control, and then you'll resolve that. Mike, have I followed Matt Stone's personal development from his Eat or Heat book to his current state? No. Is he the one that that came out and showed that he was like fat and lost his hair? Poor guy. If I'm correct, that was really brave for him to do. But no, I do not follow anyone else's work. I am my own guru. I followed Ray Peat. I used and consumed his work, and then I started my research after that, and nobody really has much to offer. When I would consume other people's work, it usually is wrong, as demonstrated by Matt's experience. And also, sorry, and it's also not that it's wrong. It's just that they're lacking. I've made so many discoveries throughout the course of my research and work, curing depression, alcoholism and addiction, hair loss, thyroid disease, cancer now. And nobody has nobody has had any of those. Nobody has any of that. Their advice for curing diabetes is just eat more fruits and vegetables. I have very specific information and found out about how for instance, tannin inhibits the pathogenic microbes, and which pathogenic microbes actually cause diabetes, and no one else has that. So I don't really consume other people's work, because theirs is based on the existing information, and my work created new science that was unknown before. So I don't really consume other people's stuff. Yeah, Matt, yeah, he is the one that did that. Yeah. So yeah, prone to being very wrong. Yeah, a lot of those people too, I don't like following them too, because they do talk like they're like they talk like a lot of these health problems are solved and known. Like they don't talk about like context or variables. They're just like, this is the way that it is, and it's solved, and you don't have to have diabetes anymore if you just eat healthy and exercise. And like that is not, it is way more complicated than that. You know, and I know a lot, and I still don't know, you know, very much. I know more than anybody else that does this, and I still don't even know a whole lot about the body. So, like, yeah. Anyway, so I don't really follow them, but you know, that was good of him to like kind of come out and update people and be honest about it. I respect that. I feel bad for him. I'd like to help him. I mean, I don't know. Yeah, every time. I mean, I get, but also too, I get told to fuck off every time I try to like, you know, help others. so I don't actively do that, try to do that anymore. For iron lowering. Oh, okay, Mike. So actually, Mike, that's not good to do, actually, Mike. I know even Ray Pete recommended giving blood, but it is not good to give blood as a way to manage. So basically, like, in addition to high dietary iron, the pathway that the factor for iron excess is our own biological absorption pathways. And so you can never give enough blood to make up for iron excess. And what happens when you give blood frequently too is that you run out of other nutrients like copper and zinc that might be not very high in your body. Giving blood to address those kind of health problems is like, you know, using a sledgehammer to like fix you know, something. It's not very elegant, and it can cause a lot more problems, and you should not have to do that. I've never given blood, you know, because obviously like we live in this very homophobic society that doesn't let gay men give blood, and so I've never actually given blood, but I wouldn't do it anyway for health reasons, because you're more likely to actually just cause yourself more nutrient deficiencies, because for instance too, like deficient uptake of zinc and copper results in excess in higher iron absorption as a backup. The body uses more iron when you're deficient in like copper and zinc. And that doesn't mean to take copper and zinc as a supplement either. That isn't the answer at all. If you just take those supplements and you don't understand how those pathways work, it will not reverse those issues. For instance, in my book, I talk about how like calcium dysregulation is like the primary factor that mediates copper dysregulation. Because copper is highly sensitive to environmental pH in the body. And so when calcium becomes dysregulated and you get ammonia excess, it actually like causes copper dysregulation. So you can't just like reverse things by just taking supplements. You have to understand the biology that underlies the reason for it in the first place. So I wouldn't donate blood as a and Mike, the fact that you're donating blood to deal with those health issues is also the part of the reason why you're so hungry all the time, because you're not addressing the actual root causes. And then also when you give blood, you have to like, you know, you have to make up for all of that, all that nutrition that you lost by doing that. People should still donate blood, you know, to help others and, you know, provide blood for emergency services. But that's like what, once a year? Yeah. Oh yeah, you're welcome, Bears. Oh yeah, I'm glad you were still here and could hear that. Okay. Aaron, what do I do easily what to do for easily dropping blood sugar throughout the day and keeping the metabolic rate? Well, Aaron, to do that, you just need to eat constantly throughout the day, and very important to that is like my story about having my backpack and my food is to plan ahead and take food with you where you go. Do not just wait until you're hungry to eat. That is one of the primary problems that most people are up against when you're dealing with health problems. We're so used to, as children and young people, just taking our health for granted, and you don't eat until you're hungry. You can't do that when you're dealing with health problems. You have to stay ahead of your hunger, because if you wait until you're hungry, it's already too late. When you wait to eat until you're hungry, your body has already released a lot of adrenaline, is probably releasing cortisol, and you're probably deficient in glycogen stores. And so because the hunger comes from reduced circulating blood sugar. So you need to plan ahead. That you have to make a plan. You have to be prepared. You have to have options to choose from, and just snack all day long. keep fruit with you, dried fruit, nuts, chocolate, candy, leftover foods, a smoothie. Have something with you all the time, and then your blood sugar will never drop. And doing that too will also help your body regenerate so that it is not so sensitive to metabolic stress. And then that helps you store more glycogen. And then in the future, once you get better, then your blood sugar will be easily sustained. But you can't do that when you're continuing to not eat. So yeah. Yeah, Aaron, roasted nuts are okay. The best ones are almonds, hazelnuts, macadamias, and then like the not so great but are still okay are like um pistachios, cashews. Actually, cashews might be on the top side. I can't remember their polyunsaturated fat content, but cashews though don't have skins on them, I think, because do they have skins on them? I think they're like the center of like the nut or the fruit that they come in. And so they don't naturally have a skin on them. So they're not useful for tannin purposes, but nuts are some of our highest natural dietary sources of vitamin E, which is essential for lots of body functions. So nuts are not only just okay to eat, they're exceptionally good to eat, especially if you choose the ones that are higher in saturated fat and lower in polyunsaturated fat. So yeah, Ojamal, I think I answered your question about low doses in the past not having effect. On Patreon, but here, low, like when you do have regular intake of iodine and it doesn't really seem to do much for you, that is probably because of like things like low carotene or vitamin A intake or low sun exposure. I know Jamal, I know you get plenty of sun. And then also maybe not taking enough cyanide. And also when you have dietary cyanide, it's most productive actually. Hello, George. Well, yeah, you can post. I mean, we're talking about my my work and health stuff. You can ask about health things if you like, but nothing unrelated to kind of what we do here. But yeah, anyway, so if a low iodine doesn't seem to work for you, then it is definitely going to be the other factors that affect health and wellness. And part of the problem too with iodine and thyroid is that iodine is also very active in the immune system. So when you are colonized by pathogenic organisms, you can run out of iodine a lot faster than when you're not. And so you can take, a little bit more than low doses of iodine regularly. If you ever are taking iodine and you notice that like your gut microbiome seems to be suppressed and you have gas all the time, that is an indication that you took too much iodine, or it's also not absorbing into your body. Iodine also requires calcium to be absorbed into the pathways, like for instance, thyroid function. So I think that there's a mechanism of the calcium dysregulation that also disturbs iodine integration into thyroid. So like, it's like one of the major chapters in my book is the chapter on calcium that talks about how to like normalize calcium metabolism into to help our body actually biologically capture and control calcium, wherein free calcium just causes calcification and alterations in pH and metabolic rate. So yeah. Mike, your follow-up question. Refeeding was where Matt Stone seemed to go wrong. I don't know what refeeding is. What does that mean? Is that like eating a lot of calories after like a dieting binge or something like that? I don't know what that means. Aaron, is copper cookware good to use? I don't know the answer to that. Yes, eating lots and lots. Yeah, I don't think that's a good idea. I think that kind of like I mean, that's just like binging and dieting, right? It's like just not having like a normalized, consistent diet. And so the problem is like when you diet, your body purposefully downregulates the metabolic rate. So then if you then eat a lot after dieting, you are going to pack on all that fat because your metabolic rate is so low already from the dieting behavior in the first place. And then dieting also promotes pathogenic colonization, and that's going to increase your uh, symptoms as well. I've seen, it reminds me of some people who have sort of maybe supposed that like consuming really high amounts of calories might help because calories are energy, and so if you eat a lot of it, that it might raise your metabolic rate. But the metabolic rate is more regulated by factors like sun exposure, vitamin C status, pathogenic colonization, thyroid. So if you just eat a whole bunch of calories, it's not necessarily going to do anything for you because you haven't addressed like pathogenic colonization, your thyroid function, sun exposure. You should be able to eat plenty of calories and not gain excess weight at all. But also you shouldn't feel like you have to eat tons and tons of calories in order to feel okay. All of those are symptoms of pathogenic colonization and poor thyroid function and poor immune function and things like, not getting enough sunlight and stuff like that. So yeah. That makes a lot of sense that Matt would experience that then if he was talking about that kind of thing. Yeah, no, that's why I talk about how like all dieting is an eating disorder. It is not normal nor healthy to purposefully abstain from eating food. No organism on the planet does that and survives and thrives. Yeah, this is really fun. How's your guys' New Year's going? It's January 13th. God, last year seemed to go by so slowly in a good way. I felt like last year for me felt like when I was like in elementary school, and like a year seemed like my entire life. And now already we're halfway through January this year. Oh, it's already going by so fast. Let's see, who else? What's the best way to cure fat digestion, fat metabolism? Do you mean, Aaron, the inability to digest fat properly? That is a very specific problem of gut dysbiosis and microbiome dysfunction, because the act of avoiding food and starving your microbes, because you also when you diet and you starve yourself, you also kill off your microbes. Your microbes require nutrients just as much as we do. So when you diet, you actually kill them off. And you don't need to take probiotics. These bacteria are everywhere in our environment. If you sustain an environment that is hospitable to them, then they will regrow and stuff like that. So, but you just have to feed them. And microbes make short chain fatty acids and B vitamins that are required to make bile, and then bile helps emulsify fat. And one of my most recent discoveries that I just did, that I posted on my Patreon, is actually how it's an extension of my discovery of what causes the Warburg effect, which is the cure to cancer, is that silicon is required for digestion of dietary fat. And I won't tell you exactly how or why here, so that you go read the post on Patreon if you're a subscriber there. It will come out in the update that I'm working on next. But yeah, and that actually helps too. And a shortcut, if you eat foods high in silicon, then it provides that function too. But in order to actually properly digest foods that have silicon, you have to have a working microbiome, which requires in turn, feeding them regularly with carbohydrates and fruit and healthy stuff like that, and vitamin D and B12 and those things. Mike, for beer, the silicon varies. Yeah, because it's mostly silicon is highest in hops. So beer that's made with hops is like really high in silicon. You've been drinking non-alcoholic IPAs with lemon. Nice. Can't eat bamboo shoots very often. Yeah, I don't really like bamboo shoots. They're really gross. I don't really use them as a source for anything. Green beans are really high in silicon, actually, and I eat tons of green beans. They're so fucking good with like a lot of butter and coconut oil. Oh my god, I love them. Yeah, but also, Mike, though, I don't. I mentioned beer in my book, but not specifically as a recommendation. I could because I think that the fermentation process, um, because it's with yeast and not bacteria, um, silicon in beer is probably not very bioavailable unless you do have a very intact microbiome that would then acidify the contents in there. Um, and once you get gut dysbiosis and you no longer have robust commensal microbes producing lots of short chain fatty acids, then the silicon doesn't acidify and instead it polymerizes, because in an alkaline pH, or in maybe even in a close to neutral pH, um silicon spontaneously polymerizes, it clumps together, and then you can't absorb that. So it has to be acidified in order for your body to absorb it. So and I think I do make the comment that like um vinegar from beer would actually probably be great because it would actually have a lot of silicon in it. But you get that anyway from digestion if you eat foods high in silicon anyway. So it's not very necessarily. And also too, people will totally mistake my work for being like, oh, you can just take a supplement of silicon, and that is not at all how it works. Like, not even close. It has much more to do with acidity than it does silicon. The silicon is obviously very important, but it's regulated entirely by acidity. So there's silicon in all food. Even in meat, there's silicon. So, and that's why healthy people have an easy time, don't get cancer, and they feel great, and they have an easy time, even if they don't have that much bad of a diet. I mean, even if they have a kind of a bad diet, that they don't really do bad because there's silicon literally in everything. So if you have working digestion and working microbiome, then you absorb all the silicon that you eat. But as soon as you get colonized by ammonia producers and other opportunistic microbes, and you lose the ability to digest food properly, both with stomach acid and with the short chain fatty acid producing microbes in the gut, then you lose the ability to absorb silicon, and so then you start to present with metabolic disease and fatigue and cancer and those problems. So. Yeah. Yes, eating lots of nuts. Cool. Yeah. Oh, yeah. That was part of the refeeding thing. Aaron, it's a weird question, but what should your poop look like? No, that's fine. Just don't show pictures of it. That's fine. I mean, not that you can here anyway, but well, actually, feces are not an ideal way to diagnose any problem, because one of the major ways in which our body handles opportunistic microbes in the gut is to induce diarrhea and liquid feces. Literally, your body flushes them out. So having liquid or diarrhea or stuff like that is not necessarily a sign of bad digestion at all. It is a sign of probably like bad microbes, or maybe you ate something that maybe you shouldn't have. Depends, but necessarily doesn't mean things are bad. Just like solid but not too stiff, doesn't hurt, not pale in color. When your feces are fatty and oily and they're pale in color, that is actually one of the only ways that's very useful to diagnose any condition, because that is caused by fat malabsorption. It can be so bad, in fact, that your feces actually float instead of sink. And if that happens, you really have bad fat malabsorption problems. And like I mentioned earlier in this training, that is a direct consequence of a poor microbiome function and poor production of short-chain fatty acids that need to be restored by eating regularly and restoring your gut microbiome and bile function, and eating silicone foods and stuff like that in order to promote fat absorption. But that's really the only thing that is useful for. I used to, there were people too. I remember back when like people would do this like olive oil quote unquote cleanse. By the way, there's no such thing as a cleanse. You cannot do cleanses. They don't do shit. They're not a thing. And they would do this olive oil cleanse where they would drink a lot of olive oil and then see green lumps in their poop. And like, that's literally just the olive oil is green. Like, you're literally just seeing the olive oil go straight through you because you're drinking so much of it. Really kind of dumb shit. But yeah, it's not very good for diagnostic or anything. My point is, don't worry about it. Gas and bloating are symptoms that you can use to diagnose issues, though. Gas and bloating are a primary symptom of vitamin D deficiency that you can reverse, as discussed in my book. So, For navigating the Insanity 2025, yes, it's going to be insane. I highly recommend placing Hasanabi with Loner Box. Oh yeah, I don't know that I've heard of Loner Box. I mean, Hassan is awesome though. Hassan really has his finger on the pulse of stuff. I wouldn't replace Hassan with anybody, but maybe in addition to Loner Box. But I'll check out Loner Box. I haven't heard of them. I don't know for sure who that is. I really like Hassan, but I hate streamers in general. Streamers just inherently have this narcissistic aversion to dialogue, and especially consider their chatters as kind of even subhuman. And yeah, there's a lot of dumb, mean people that get on and say stupid shit, but the far majority of people that are actually contributing to your community are interested. They come from all varieties of life. Like, I mean, I cannot tell you how many streamers they use their platform to complain about health problems, and then when people like me try to help them, they say, fuck you, fuck off, and they ban you from their chat. And like, you're the one that's literally using your platform to trauma dump and exploit people's, kindness and consideration for your well-being, and then you're telling them to fuck off. Like, that's just really antisocial, toxic behavior. And and Hassan kind of does that too a little bit, and he promotes really toxic hair medications in the pharmaceutical industry, not even realizing that he's doing that. And then and they weren't, so his mods weren't mean to me when I tried to speak up about that. And I think they heard me actually. I sent them a message that was like, look, Hassan needs to shut the fuck up about the pharmaceutical industry. Like, he talks about communism, socialism, and people's well-being and universal healthcare, and then turns around and promotes like finasteride, which is like one of the most toxic medications that you can take. And he stopped, and I haven't heard him talk about that since I sent that message. So I think I probably got through in a little bit on way to him. But yeah, anyway, I'll check out Lonerbox. Aaron, you bought two kinds of bamboo extract. One looks green, the other looks white. Probably the white one. The extract, bamboo and other grasses like horsetail actually contain an anti-thiamine factor called thymidinase. And if it's not prepared properly, like if it's not cooked or heated, the thymidinase in it can actually give you thiamine deficiency. So taking bamboo extract and horsetail extract or whole prepared powdered versions of those could potentially cause you a thiamine deficiency. And I mentioned this in my book. And so I like the more just like straight up silicon extract, and I would recommend that instead, probably. So it could be that those supplements are fine and prepared properly, but I don't know. So. Oh, thank you, Aaron. That's nice of you to say. What's going on in my life at the moment? Oh, thanks. No, not really anything interesting. A lot of you guys know I've sort of, because of my research and work and wanting to get better too, I've put my whole life on hold. I'm not dating anybody. I don't really have a social life, and it's kind of silly. But now that I've accomplished most of my research and I'm almost completely healthy again. Because remember, like, I purposefully infected myself with oral infectious bacteria to study them because of having cystic fibrosis, which I did not know at the time. That made me highly susceptible to constantly contracting those, and because when you have cystic fibrosis, your immune system doesn't work very well, and then that also predisposes you to an increased risk of cancer and diabetes, specifically leukemia and lymphoma. And so then I didn't want to infect people because I knew that I had this like communicable oral infectious bacteria. And anyone who has weight problems and gum disease, you have these too. Lots of people have them, but I didn't want to be spreading them around. So I was like, oh, like I won't, I just won't date while I'm doing this. And it'll take me like 6 months to a year. And, fast forward, all of a sudden, it's been 6 years since I started doing that. And it got so frustrating. And at one point, I got so frustrated with not having a life that I was just going to take antibiotics and tell people to take antibiotics and get it over with and get done with it. And then I did. So I bought some antibiotics to experiment. I got penicillin, tetracycline, and clindamycin. And I started with the penicillin. It didn't do shit. It literally didn't do anything. It didn't affect my microbiome. It didn't affect my gum disease. And then I tried the doxycycline. It kind of wiped out my microbiome, but didn't do anything about my oral disease. Then I tried the clindamycin, and the clindamycin basically just eradicated everything out of my gut. And it caused such bad C. difficile infection that I almost nearly had to go to the hospital because it started creeping up into my liver. I mean, I could feel it. It hurt so bad. I was in a lot of pain. But then that is how I actually discovered how that the usefulness of tannin. That tannin is actually a really effective natural antibiotic, and it wiped out my C. difficile infection. And like C. difficile usually requires a very complex round of 3 specialized antibiotics, and sometimes that even fails. So then you have to get a fecal gut microbiome. And I literally cured mine by eating hazelnuts every day. And anyway, so then that kept. So then I just stuck with it again. And but now, anyway, now that I'm better, I got onto the dating apps. I just stuck my toe in. I was like looking at these profiles. I saw this guy who was like, he was really cute. He was only 30 though, and I'm 44, so that's quite an age difference. But he was tall. He looked more grown up than 30. And I mean, you know, you guys who are 30 and younger, you think you're grown up, but when you get to my age, like you guys are still kind of young. So I kind of am more like, I think 35 might be the lowest I should go. But anyway, but he was really cute and nice. And I didn't message him right away because I was still finishing up some stuff, and I was gonna message him later. And so I was like kind of like fantasizing about, how he'll totally fall for me. I'm gonna be like his type. He's gonna be into like, you know, a little bit older men who are, you know, hairy and muscular, and you know, we're gonna have a great relationship. And I was kind of fantasizing about it. And then I tried. Then I finally like 3 or 4 months after I first saw his profile, I actually sent him a message. Completely ignored, just fully shut down, like like not even no acknowledgement. He didn't even block me, like he just didn't respond at all, and it was really demoralizing. And I was kind of bummed for a day, but yeah. Anyway, so I just stuck my toe in, and I'm gonna put myself out there probably more this year. So we'll see. But yeah, I even in my last email that I sent out to, I even said that like, hey, I'm not gonna do much research for a few months and just take a break. And I didn't even do that. I kept doing, I've been doing research the whole time. Surprise. There's still more, like, you know, fancy that. There's still more to do. So I've just been doing that, but I'm gonna start having a life sometime soon. So anyway, and the thing is too, Aaron, and thanks for asking. That was nice of you. Ever since I've, you know, done plenty of inventory and I fixed a lot of the trauma that I had, I like my own company. I like, you know, I have a great time. There's times when I do feel lonely, you know, like kind of during Christmas, it was kind of lonely, but I made myself a chocolate cake for New Year's, and I like had a fun time. Like I literally like enjoyed myself thoroughly, and it snowed here, and you know, and I go out in the city and I explore places, and I don't know. I didn't used to have that when I was younger, and it's been one of the reasons why I put off that kind of stuff too, anyway, because like I don't know, I like my life. It's nice. It's fun. I don't have to deal with any crazy, emotionally draining people. I can just focus on myself. Bears. When consuming plant-based silicone, do I know if silicone remains in the fiber or is it in the juice? Yes and no. I mean, the answer is both. Depends on your digestion. Depends on if you have good stomach acid and if you have an intact microbiome. If you don't have those things and you eat whole plant foods, no, you don't absorb the silicone, and it remains in the plant. One of the reasons that our microbes need B12 is because plant physiology literally operates on principles of polarity, wherein they repel through electromagnetic forces microorganisms from their surface. That's our body does that too. Our mucosal tissue does that as well. Part of our defensive mechanism against colonization by microbes is electromagnetic polarity that repels microorganisms the same way when you put 2 ends of a magnet or a battery together and they repel each other. Same thing. And so microbes use B12 to neutralize their charge so they can then adhere to indigestible substrate. And so if you're deficient in vitamin D and B12, and not dietary B12 either. This is B12 that is produced by archaea that also colonize our body that are dependent on vitamin D. There's no studies that show this. This is my work that I researched and found and figured out. So like if you look up like, that online, you won't find that, but I found it through looking at related studies and information, and then my own experimentation, finding out that Thyroid is the principal microbiological producer of B12 in most animals, especially us, that our microbiome is then dependent on. And so if you are deficient in any of those, you won't digest the food, and then it goes, and then our commensal microbes don't consume them, and then they are instead enacted on by methanogens that produce that gas, that use methane as the way to neutralize their charge. But they don't produce the useful substrates like short-chain fatty acids and stuff like we need from our commensal microbiome. So, yeah. But yeah, and so you can use that as a diagnostic to whether or not you are vitamin D deficient. So, eating watermelon gives you gas, but the filtered juice does not. Yeah, because the whole fruit would have a lot more fiber and indigestible stuff in it. So that's why. I don't know. I didn't look to see if watermelon is high in silicon, so I don't have an answer for you for that. If it is high in silicon, you could probably like add some lemon juice to it, but it wouldn't really work so much because the juice would be slightly acidic itself anyway, though, watermelon. But the primary problem is ammonia producers in your gut, and that definitely would not be acidic enough to counteract the high ammonia in your gut. So the first step is that you have to address the ammonia producers first. Then if you did do that, then it might be okay. Okay. So, but would work better and more reliably if you actually like promote get your microbiome working so that they produce the short chain fatty acids. I don't know if you guys saw, I posted a picture on my Instagram of my I called it a melanoma in my book, but I think I was wrong. I think it was more of a carcinoma. I didn't get it biopsied, but it's basically a scab that never heals on your skin. It's kind of gross, and it's skin cancer, and it was a carcinoma. And I took a picture of it after it started spontaneously healing, when I first discovered how B12 interacts with the microbiome to promote digestion. And at the time, I thought that that occurrence probably was from something like the vitamin K content, because it literally happened from one salad. I put B12 in a salad, a giant salad with lots of lettuce and spinach and tomatoes and carrots and raisins, and I thought that maybe perhaps the influence of B12 had just liberated more vitamin K, and that had probably caused it to heal over. So I took a picture of it, and that was, I forget, several years ago. I wrote on the post, I think it's 2021 or 2020, something like that. And then then 2 years later, 2.5, 3 years later, I discovered the cause of the Warburg effect, and realized that the reason it had healed over was because of the silicon that had acidified from the salad content. Because a lot of those salad foods are high in silicon. Spinach is really high, actually. And so then I was doing that, but I was also still pretty lazy about it. And like a month, well, now it's been like 2 months now. Like 2 months ago, I thought I should maybe try to do this every single day. I was using the silicon lemon juice every single day when I was first experimenting with it, but now I've been doing, because I'm more healed and my microbiome is working, I've been using silicon in my tea instead, because polyphenols in like coffee and tea are a very potent substrate for short-chain fatty acid production by microbes. So putting the silicon, and much lower dose too. You don't do the high doses when you do this, like 50 milligrams in a batch. I put it in that, and then when I drink, and then I was having that every single day. And then the carcinoma scar, which still had a growth under my skin, and you could feel it, and it was kind of hard, started to soften up and actually change back to more of the color of my natural skin, which was really cool. And it was great too that I had this, because I could actually, because I can't photograph my thyroid or my bone marrow where I had the other cancers, but I can photograph my skin. So I did that. And so I put a photo up of that progress on there. But yeah, that's like, that is that kind of stuff that you should expect. You can tell if it's working because you should have increases in energy if you feel low, or like if you do have cancer, you have tumors, you can feel, then they should soften up and things like that. So you can literally see the whether or not it's working from the improvement in symptoms or not. And if it's not, there's probably some factor you're missing, like controlling for ammonia and things like that. Oh yeah, Mike. Yeah, you have to. I should when I'm talking about something you guys answer, I should probably jump around and address those so I don't do it like an hour later. So, but yeah, floating feces is a primary symptom of what's called steatorrhea. It's steatorrhea, right? Is that correct? Where you don't absorb the fats, and so they pass through you, and that's a big problem because hormones and steroids are made out of fats. And so so if you have fat malabsorption, then you get hypogonadism and hypothyroidism and stuff like that. So, oh, good, cool, yeah. I'll watch that. Because the source of natural CO2 sugar. Well, actually, Mike, that sounds dangers of left-wing anti-Semitism sounds more like anti-Palestinian racism, because that's been going on a lot recently, where people are mischaracterizing advocacy for Palestine as anti-Semitism, and that's not okay. That's really awful, actually. You should not be anti-Palestinian or anti-Jewish. So he sounds like much more of like maybe a debate bro. So I might not like him. I don't like debate bros. But we'll see. I'll go look. Because it's a source of natural CO2, sugar tannins, acetic acid, how possible? Wait, sorry, Bears. It's been, thoughts on kombucha. Oh, sorry, I didn't see that. Okay, kombucha, because it's a source of natural CO2, sugar, tannins, acetic acid. Loner box is Lebanese. Oh, cool. Okay, cool. Yeah, cool. I'll go look at it. Kombucha, high in tannins, acetic acid, etc. However possibly. You're asking. Is kombucha estrogenic and has lactic acid? So, lots of things are estrogenic. Even tea that I recommend all the time is estrogenic. It depends on the quantity you would take in, the degree of estrogen, and the types of compounds. Some are far more worse than others. For instance, the estrogenic compounds that are in soy are very powerfully estrogenic. But the estrogens that are in tea are not that bad. They're not that potent. If you had a diet like high in soy, high in tea, high in legumes, then you're going to start seeing estrogen symptoms. But also, kind of a lot of the bias against estrogen is actually rooted in misogyny and actually is not always relevant toward biology. Like, a lot of guys want to avoid estrogen just so they don't get man boobs, and get soft because they have, we've got, deeply rooted misogynistic ideas about being female, estrogen in nature is a growth hormone. It promotes growth of cells and tissues, and it's actually vital for our survival as a human and even as male. In fact, muscle growth is mediated by testosterone's conversion into estrogen when it gets taken up by muscles. Ray P even said, I think I remember him mentioning that the brain is masculinized by estrogen during the gestation process in the womb. Estrogen is highly misunderstood, and one of its primary functions that can also cause unwanted side effects, though, like hair loss, is that estrogen promotes an increase in intracellular nitric oxide. Now, excess intracellular nitric oxide is harmful for cells because it inhibits mitochondrial respiration, but it also is potently antimicrobial. And cells make excess intracellular nitric oxide when, and it's called inducible nitric oxide, when they're colonized by viruses, parasites, fungi, and bacteria. And so estrogen actually helps your body to better fight those pathogens. And but the reason but high intracellular nitric oxide is one of the primary underlying etiologies of hair loss in men. And the reason that women don't experience the same thing, even though they have high estrogen, is because they also have high progesterone that actually protects cells against some of the stress-inducing effects of estrogen. And men don't have that, so then you can lose your hair. But also, I think very specifically that male pattern hair loss is a symptom of the estrogen-mediated increase in intracellular nitric oxide in response to hair-eating mites that colonize human skin and feed on your hair as it grows out of the follicle. And yeah, it's gross, but they exist. There are mites, and they eat hair. They eat it like the same way that like sea urchins eat kelp in the ocean. They love it, and they sit there and munch on it. And one of the primary protective factors that our body has against that is iodine, the immune system. The iodine is actually deposited all over the hair follicle and in the hair itself. And that helps to protect the skin against pathogens like hair-eating mites, as well as fungi that cause dandruff and bacteria that infect pores. And so part of the problem of iodine deficiency caused by industrialized agriculture, like I talk about in my book, is that you lose these defensive barriers. So then, and you'll notice too, there's like especially there's like a lot of streamers or like, I don't know, influencers that like take steroids and they all lose their hair. And part of the reason they lose their hair is because excess exogenous testosterone, it gets converted into more, it aromatizes into more estrogen. And that's one of the reasons why they are actually so puffy and giant, but that's also why they lose their hair, because there's an increase in intracellular nitric oxide that the scalp hair produces in response to low blood flow, poor kynurenine pathway activity. That is a default defensive mechanism against colonization of the skin by those pathogens. Somebody messaged me, one of you guys messaged me a few days ago or a week ago or something like that, that asked about I mentioned that the same factors that influence hair loss also cause deafness and hearing loss because of the hairs that are involved in the inner ear in sensing sound waves. And they only mentioned the kynurenine pathway, but I actually said that all the factors that influence hair loss also affect hearing loss, and pathogens also invade the inner ear canal. And so iodine in the immune system and thyroid are vital for hearing maintenance and not losing your hearing as you get older, as much as it is actually keeping the hair on the top of your head. So nitric oxide serves this really vital immune resistance function, where if you are deficient in thyroid and immune function, then it serves as a backup. So when you're eating, quote unquote estrogenic foods like tea or, legumes or things like that, part of the reason that it ends up inducing, traits that you don't want to acquire is actually because of its role in helping your body to resist the pathogens that are causing you the disease in the first place. Yeah. So instead of being so concerned about whether something has some estrogen in it, God forbid, you actually need to focus on promoting your immune system and your thyroid function, because when that's working, then you reduce the pathogenic pressure that you experience. That's actually the root cause of that, not the little bit of estrogenic compounds. Some are obviously very high in it. That's why, like I said earlier, soy is like really high. So I don't ever have soy. But if you go have sushi and you have some soy sauce, totally fine. That's not going to bother you at all. It's when you have it like every day constantly that it can be a problem. So, excuse me. I'm reaching my limit of talking. My voice is starting to dry out. We were talking about the kombucha. So yeah, kombucha totally fine too. Yeah. So for that same reason. Oh, thanks, Mike. Yeah. Just a majority report. Yeah. I mean, yeah, and majority report, they're generally like okay too, but they're kind of they're pretty lib, so I don't really like them that much either. So yeah, that makes sense. Um, Aaron, you believe in cold approach versus dating apps? Oh, Aaron, you mean in person? Yeah, meeting a romantic potential partner in person it's just intoxicating and it's magical. But unfortunately our world is constructed the way that it is, which makes that very difficult to do. So my only option might be dating apps. Eating fruit in the middle of the night if you wake up periodically. Yeah, totally. Yeah, although if you're waking up in the middle of the night, vitamin K is going to be more beneficial for going back to sleep with some calcium. So like have some spinach or parsley if you have it laying around, or basil, or a little dose of calcium. That'll probably help you go back to sleep better. Yeah, you're welcome, Bears. Thank you for being here. Do I have any specific method for researching new topics? Yes, I always just go straight to NCBI, the National Center for Biotechnological Information. It's a giant depository for every study in the world, basically. And so then I don't directly go there and use their search function. I just will Google like NCBI and then whatever thing I'm interested in researching, and it works really well. Brings up, and I'll always put also in quotes the thing I'm going to research. Like, say for instance, if I'm researching diabetes and copper, I'll do NCBI diabetes in quotes, and then separately in other quotes copper, and then that will bring up every study on NCBI that talks about diabetes and copper. And then I read the titles and abstract to see if it might contain information that's relevant to what I want to know. So, yeah. What smoothie would I recommend for easy food to keep blood sugar high? Eating too much and too often is quite stressful. Prefer drinking food. Yeah. Fruit. I mean, you can never go wrong with fruit, except bananas when they have high serotonin. So having too many bananas can be a problem. But anything else, what I do, Aaron, is I often buy frozen fruit. So, it stays in my fridge until I need it. I mean, my freezer easily until I need it, and it's always there. And then I just make pour in some strawberries and orange juice and some sugar and blend it up. It's really easy. You can use whatever you want. But Aaron, although actually, sorry, it's not that easy because a lot of industrial fruit is not ripe, and so it doesn't have a very good or favorable sugar profile. So I always add extra sugar to it. Or when I was more diabetic, I would actually make invert sugar, like by boiling. You can actually make invert sugar. You can buy invert sugar at the store, but you can also make it by just boiling sugar in water with a little bit of added acid, and that will actually pre-digest the sucrose and separate it into glucose and fructose. And then I would use that in my smoothies instead of straight up sugar. But now that I don't really present with diabetic symptoms, I just use normal sugar. But for instance, if you have a smoothie and you add sugar, and later you don't feel very good, that's a very good chance you have diabetes, and you're not digesting the sugar well. So then you need to go into my chapter on diabetes and resolve all those issues in order to benefit from it. So yeah. Jamal, can I explain the mechanism for why low metabolic rate leads to aromatization? Yes. When you are metabolically ill, your cells are much more susceptible to damage and death. So the body needs more estrogen in order to regrow tissue. So when your metabolic rate drops, the aromatase enzyme is increased. Activity of aromatase is increased, and then that increases aromatization. I don't know the exact mechanism for how the low metabolic rate raises aromatase, but it does. And but the reason for it is because estrogen is required to regrow and regenerate tissue. And actually yeah, so and Jamal, so like, and the reason that women have higher estrogen is because women having a uterus and ovaries, every month women anyone, because transgender men still have a uterus and ovaries. Anyone with a uh, uterus and ovaries. Once a month. You shed your uterine lining, and also there's a structure in the ovary called the corpus luteum that disintegrates and regrows every month. It just completely disappears, and then it regrows itself. And so, so one of the reasons that women have higher estrogen is in order to better regenerate these tissues all the time, constantly. But it's sort of it's really a myth that like estrogen isn't important for men at all. Like it's vital. Like estrogen is not no, and this is also something else too that people don't understand is that no hormone has a gender. Testosterone is not a male hormone, and estrogen is not a female hormone. They have specific biological properties, and their quantity in combination with the ratio to other hormones is what creates gender, not the actual hormone itself. So estrogen is primarily a hormone of growth, which is achieved by causing cells to increase their water content, and that makes cells expand, and that induces mitosis. And so if you don't have estrogen, your cells can't do that. And so when you are injured or you're regenerating, your tissues are regenerating, they produce more estrogen for that reason. And so regeneration and renewal and regrowth and growth in general, they all are mediated by estrogen. And and testosterone is also an anabolic hormone. But they all have very specific functions. So even like because growth hormone itself it has a lot of the similar properties to estrogen, actually. And it's really funny too, because a lot of bodybuilders take growth hormone because it's called growth hormone, and they don't have a fucking clue what it actually does. But growth hormone is like even more potent of an estrogen than estrogen is. It like massively causes cells to take up water even more than estrogen does. So so you get like, especially bodybuilders that take growth hormone, they have like really bloated bodies and like purple skin because their skin has it is so choked of oxygen delivery because of the such excess of water retention in their tissues. And it's kind of nuts. So, oh, hello, Geeko. Nice to see you. So yeah, so like so use of or anyway, yeah. So hormones do not have gender. Like it's their ratio and combination to other hormones that creates gender. So like worrying, estrogen is growth, and so like when you you don't need to worry so much about aromatization. For instance, like there's a lot of people that really want to look really male and have like not even a trace of femininity in their features, even though some femininity makes you look really hot. Worry a lot. People that are very traumatized about their body image and identity really worry about things like aromatization. But you don't really need to worry so much specifically about aromatization. You have to remember that your body is just as interested in you being healthy as you are. And this is one of the reasons why trying to hack biology usually does not work, and very often produces exactly the opposite result than you want, because we have no control over biology in nature. You can make good decisions that do influence it, but ultimately you cannot make biology do what you want. It's going to always do what you want, and very often when you try to hack biology, you actually interfere with pathways that then trigger other compensatory pathways, and you end up causing problems that you didn't even like think you might have. So you don't have to really worry about aromatization, but because the reason that it happens in men too when you're having metabolic disease is because of the regeneration and regrowth pathways that your body is trying to activate, that are just also inhibited by like pathogenic colonization and dieting and sunlight deficiency and all those factors. So when you address those, the body will take care of that kind of thing itself, and it will make hormones as it sees fit according to the amount and quality of the cholesterol and the fat content of your diet and all those other factors. So yeah. Aaron, can't find a silica acid anywhere. Oh well. Oh, Aaron, you said you got a bamboo extract that's like white, like that. That's silicone. You can use that. Yeah. Um, I've been using. I don't recommend brands. Actually, I won't say the brand of it, but I've been using a bamboo. It's called bamboo silica, and it's a bamboo extract silicone. They say silica, but it's silicone. You don't want to use. I mean, you can make silicic acid by just acidifying silicon dioxide. If you put silicon dioxide into like acid, it will still make silicic acid, but I think it's probably safer and better, and probably produces less of a risk for silicosis if you use a plant sourced, because plant silicon is silicic acid when it's in the plant. It can become silicic. It can convert back to silicon dioxide if it dries out and all these other things. But I think it's probably just safer to use the plant sources. So yeah. Do women need more iodine than men? Actually, I don't know the answer to that. I don't know. um, I'd say maybe no, but I don't actually know the answer. Men often need more nutrition than women because we're actually less designed by nature to survive than women are. Because you can repopulate an entire species with one male, but you can't do that with one woman. So nature is much more concerned about women's survival than it is about men's survival. So our biology is less efficient and robust and more expendable. And for that reason, we usually require more nutrients to do the same thing that women's bodies do. So, um, did I ever have a glance at YouTube Hair Cafe? No, I didn't. I think I remember you mentioning him a really long time ago, Mike. Does finasteride syndrome go beyond what is clinically expressed? I don't really know what you mean by that, beyond what is clinically expressed, because finasteride syndrome is pretty serious and severe. I don't really know what you mean by that. Do you mean, is it worse than like doctors make it out to be? Yes. Have I explored patents or research proposals for clinical trials? No, I haven't. I don't think anything that I have discovered is patentable, nor would I really want to do that anyway, except just to protect it from predatory patent people. But it's really not patentable. Somebody like so one of you guys commented on my Instagram when I talked about the cure for cancer that I needed to patent it quickly so that the government couldn't steal it, or pharmaceutical companies couldn't steal it. But it literally is just the acidification. It's literally mixing lemon juice and silicone together, and you don't even have to do that. Just eating high silicon foods and taking care of your gut microbiome does it too. So it's literally not something that you can patent. It's not like I invented a chemical or or a drug or something like that. It's literally just discovering how dietary factors play together to restore that. So I don't think it's patentable. Research proposals and clinical trials would be very great for my work. There's a lot of things that I would love to have actual trials about, and I keep a list of them for if I ever get the ability to have that kind of influence. But Mike, nobody fucking listens to me yet. Mike, I have contacted editors at scientific journals. I have contacted journalists. I have contacted actual research scientists that are in the field, and nobody will even respond or listen to what I have to say. I did notice that they visit my site, though. They sure go there when I tell them, but they completely ignore me. And they don't want their institutions to be undermined. They believe that you've got to be in an institution in order to make those kind of discoveries, and it's not true. And they don't want that illusion to be dashed, because then that would mean they lose their authority. So yeah, but maybe one day. What would I recommend green banana skin for smoothie? Yeah, green banana skin is really high in dopamine. It's also really high in tannin, though, so it's very bitter. But you can use a little bit in like a smoothie to impart some tannin and dopamine. Yeah. After soaking brown rice for 24, oh, sorry, Kiko. Yeah, I talk, Kiko, I talk a lot, so it takes a while for me to sometimes get to comments. So I apologize. After soaking brown rice for 24 hours, should you discard the water, or does the soaking water have, yes, it does have nutritional value, and don't discard it. Just make sure you wash the rice first before you soak it, and then use that soaking water to cook the rice in that, so you retain all those nutrients. People think that the like when you soak anything, in water, people think that all of the discoloration that comes out of the grain is like dirt and grime, but it's not. It's literally like tannins and sugars and copper and iron and plant bound iron, magnesium and calcium and potassium. So you don't really want to discard that. And it's really good, and it also has flavor, Kiko. So it makes the food taste better, yummier too. And also very specifically, people don't understand this very often too, that the reason to soak foods like rice or other whole grains is because water activates their enzyme called phytase that breaks down phytate. The phytate does not leach into the water. It's literally chemically, enzymatically broken down by exposure to the water. So it's not, so it doesn't, so phytate doesn't leak into the water and needs to be discarded. It's literally just enzymatically destroyed by it. So yeah. And then, yeah, so definitely like cook. I always, whenever I soak brown rice, I then just cook it in that water. But I do rinse the rice a little bit before, but rice is usually clean. It's not like covered in dirt. But I just rinse it off quick and then soak it and then cook it in it. So yeah, and you can do that. And you can do that with spelt and einkorn and kamut and beans and other legumes that you soak too. So and then also too, because you need using the whole grains like that is useful for the tannin content. And then if you just dump the water out, you lose all that tannin. So yeah. How do you make sugar that diabetic people can use? Invert sugar. You can buy it or you can make it. And you basically just do a 1-to-2 ratio of water to sugar, boil it, and add a little acid, like a little lemon juice or a little citric acid. And you boil it for like 10 minutes on low. And it turns it into invert sugar. Oh, sorry. Because Aaron, like the reason that, because one of the reasons that diabetics have problems with sugar metabolism is because of how pathogens interfere with its digestion and absorption. The microvilli that line our intestinal system, the ends of those are what produce sucrase that breaks down sucrose. And as you have metabolic disease and diabetes, pathogens literally eat our tissues, and they eat the ends of the microvilli, and they disintegrate and atrophy, and then you don't produce sucrase. I've said before that the pancreas produced it, but I was just mistaken. I didn't know. It's not the pancreas. It's actually just your actual gut lining produces sucrase. And so in diabetes and other metabolic problems, you actually lose the sucrase enzyme, and then you can't break down the sugar when you eat it. And then that sugar remains in your intestinal system, where it then feeds opportunistic microbes. So if you make invert sugar and you have sugar with tannin and tea, then it's really funny, guys. This is really funny. So, I realized, I read somewhere not too long ago that tannin actually has an insulin-like effect on our biology, which explains a lot of my research and discoveries that I've made. And what's really funny about this is, like, if you look up on YouTube, if you type in, sweet tea is like one of the biggest things in the southern United States. It's everywhere in the southern United States. And if you look up on YouTube, if you search sweet tea recipes, the person that's making it is usually like a skinny as fuck, like blonde chick. Like, she's clearly not somebody that like has diabetes. And they're all the ones that are making the sweet tea. They're not usually people that present with obvious like symptoms of diabetes. They're all just like, kind of normal looking, healthy people. And it's because tannin in tea helps promote normal sugar metabolism by first inhibiting pathogenic microorganisms, and then secondarily supporting insulin function. So you get healthier like sugar absorption. It's really funny. Anyway. But yeah, so that's how, like, you making in invert sugar and or also using tea or other tannin sources with the sugar. Mike, for many species, testosterone compromises the body system for antlers and so on. Yeah, in humans, the testosterone shortened lifespan. Yeah, actually, Mike, what's really interesting is that testosterone actually interferes with immune function. And it's one of the reasons why, like, when you get sick, your libido just tanks. Like, you just don't feel aroused at all. Like, if you get the flu or a cold or something, like, you just don't get aroused. And that's because the body purposefully down regulates testosterone production when you're colonized by really harmful microbes in order to better facilitate the immune system. And I think this is probably the primary reason why people like me with cystic fibrosis present with less masculine features than healthy males, is probably because you get colonized by the parasites that cause cystic fibrosis from the time that you're a child, and so then you never really develop a robust masculine testosterone symptom. And people would be confused with me saying that because I have this like really dark, thick beard, right? Um, I don't really present as lacking in masculinity, but there's very specific features. Like, if you ever see males that are just really manly and look really fucking hot, look at their body hair pattern. One of the patterns that occurs from high dihydrotestosterone production is that your chest hair will kind of centralize. It gets thicker and more dense in the center of your chest, in the I forgot what the line is called, the meridian, that runs up and down your body, and your happy trail below your belly button and up around your belly button too. Males will have really hairy areas that are very specifically dense in hair, whereas when you have more just general testosterone and low dihydrotestosterone, which is the active form of testosterone, you get more of like a evenly distributed hair pattern. And like those are kind of, and like, I've never had very large masculine forearms. Like, my forearms, they're not really that hairy and they're not that big. And that's like, and I don't have much vasculature either. And like so I think that is actually mediated by a lifelong colonization with the microbes that cause cystic fibrosis. So anytime you're sick and stuff, testosterone is down regulated in order to promote better immune function. And then once you get better, it comes back. Jamal, you were asking about the estrogen stuff because you read that breast and ovaries require extra iodine. Oh yeah, they do. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yes, that's true. So breast, actually any endocrine organ, any gland, actually requires a high throughput of iodine. And glandular cancers are very specifically associated with iodine deficiency, which is one of the reasons why so many women get breast cancer, is because the breast does require a high amount of iodine, which is actually sorely lacking in our industrial food system. And so part of the therapy, whenever I discuss and coach people with breast cancer, which you can get breast cancer. Men have breasts also. That's why we have nipples. Men, we have fully intact breast biology beneath your nipples. That's why, like, transgender women can spontaneously grow breasts from hormone replacement therapy, just like cisgender women who have hormone replacement therapy also can get bigger breasts. Like we have all that biology there. So men can but because breast tissue is not usually activated in men, we don't require as much iodine for that. But any active glandular, this is why men get prostate cancer, is because the prostate is an active glandular organ, and so the prostate also requires very high iodine throughput too. And I think the reason is for immune function, because those organs. So actually, guess what? Okay, so a lot of you guys know that because of my discovery of what causes cancer, that the primary catalyst for cancer are ammonia-producing pathogens, which also especially include parasites. Excuse me. My voice is really starting to run out. And people love to think that we don't have to deal with parasites in our country, not for any good reason, just because they're willfully ignorant, because a lot of people are really freaked out by parasites. But yes, parasites are widely distributed and are even in so-called developed industrial societies. And part of the reason they're widely spread in well-developed industrialized societies is because of that willful ignorance and stupidity, where people want to pretend that they're not targets of many thousands of different types of parasites. Gut distension, for instance, is a primary symptom of colonization with Giardia that everyone thinks that the chlorination of drinking water cures. It doesn't. Giardia can be passed around through interpersonal contact every bit as much as it can through like water sources. And then that gut distension and Giardia colonization is specifically associated with zinc deficiency. So everyone that has a distended, large, round belly has Giardia. When you have cancer of the breast, prostate, esophagus, probably anywhere in the cranionasal areas, it's caused by parasites. And guess how parasites get to the breast? It's just through sexual activity, because everybody likes licking nipples. And when you lick nipples, you deposit the parasites that are living in your mouth into the milk duct of the nipple, which is why it can also happen to men. and parasites can travel up the uterine canal, up through the vagina and into the uterine area. And, because there's parasites that they're called trichomonas, and they love mucosal tissue. And there's mucosal tissue in all of the reproductive organs, in the urethra, the vagina, the uterus, the fallopian tubes, the vas deferens in men, the prostate. Yes, Joe Rogan is probably both a Giardia case and a trichomonas case. Because they're widespread. Parasites have been around for millions of years. They're highly specialized in colonizing hosts. They're also one of the things too that makes parasites so virulent is that they're very often non-specific. So they live there in their life cycle, and they can choose many different hosts in which to live. They can live in snails. They live in mollusks. They live in birds, in dogs, deer, bears, or pigs, cows, and in humans all together. Like they can just go to whatever species that they, have access to. The same parasites that colonize mice and cats also can colonize the human brain. And so they're literally everywhere. And the willful delusion that we don't deal with parasites is just like, I had some people yell at me on social media once when I told them that something about parasites, and they started screaming at me because we live in America, we don't deal with parasites, and it's so fucking stupid and delusional. And you go swimming in a reservoir where like there's a lot of snails, and you can just pick up those. But anyway, but the point is though that reducing exposure to parasites is not the factor that prevents you from parasitism. It is your really well-functioning immune system and metabolic health. And so, so the immune system downregulates testosterone when you're exposed to pathogens, because testosterone actually inhibits the immune system. And and then you need iodine to support the immune system, especially in areas that are more vulnerable to exposure by pathogens, such as the whole reason I brought this up is because people don't think of like breast tissue as being exposed to pathogens, but it is every single time that you have sex and like play around and lick them and things like that. So you frequently get exposed to those potential. And this is one of the reasons why cancer always, very often, not always, but very, very often recurs in people, is because the cancer treatment process, like with chemotherapy, eradicates a lot of the pathogens that are actually causing the cancer. And then you get better, and then you go back to having a normal life, which includes sex with your partner, and your partner was never treated for them because they didn't present with cancer. So they're just actually a reservoir for those pathogens. And then you get reinfected. And because you had cancer already, you're even more susceptible to it coming back. And then you relapse, and then they put you through all chemo again. And then you end up eventually dying from cancer treatment anyway, because the treatment is so harsh on your body as well. So if you actually instead address the root cause, like I talk about in my book, then you recover from cancer permanently. And I mean, not permanently. Like we're not superhumans. Like you're always going to be. We always are always vulnerable to potential disease, but your resistance, increases significantly if you know how to deal with it. And yeah. Is sucrase also in yeast? What reasons are there to avoid yeast? Actually, I don't know there are reasons to avoid yeast. I even recommend on my website there's a recipe for kvass, which is a Eastern European beverage that you just like mix fruit and fruit juice with yeast, and it's yummy. Fizzes up. If you leave it to ferment too long, it'll turn alcoholic. It'll turn into sangria, which isn't a problem. But yeah, and you just drink it. It's really nice. Yeast are actually important for our physiology, but they're so poorly studied, and because they're really hard to culture. And they don't like. So for instance, like a lot of the yeasts that are on your body live in your mouth, and they end up dying by the time your feces excrete your body. So they're really hard to study, and so there's not a lot of information on them, but there are a lot of studies that show that populations of probiotic yeast die off during a lot of metabolic diseases. And so, but it's not really possible to like take them as a probiotic or anything. And I think they're really just probably more maintained by the same kinds of principles that I talk about in terms of gut health and encouraging a good microbiome and things like that. So, yeah. Aaron, you never knew why you craved and loved cooked apples. Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah, with lemon juice and cinnamon. Yeah. 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 You've got tannin in the apple skin. You have malic acid in the apple itself. You have all the vitamins and minerals that an apple might have. You have the pectin, high pectin content that can be metabolized by microbes into acetic acid. Then lemon juice is high in vitamin C and citric acid. And the cinnamon is high in cinnamic acid, which is really protective against oxidative stress in the body. So yeah. How tannin is too much? Sorry, my voice is really going. Aaron, I don't think there is so much as such a thing as too much tannin. I think there are sources of tannin that are too strong that you could take, but we don't use them in our diet. It'd be like you have to go like hunt down like exotic sources of really, really strong tannins. Or like, for instance, if a supplement company ever made a supplement called tannic acid, which is a synthetic tannin, there's no such thing as tannic acid. Like there's hundreds and hundreds of tannins. Tannin is never one thing. And synthetic tannic acid is probably not good to use. I couldn't say exactly why, but a lot of the bad studies I've seen where studies showed tannin had bad effects on the body were using synthetic tannic acid, but when they use natural tannins, it doesn't usually produce those results. The only nutrient that tannin consistently interferes with in studies is iron, which is actually good, especially if you are dealing with a lot of metabolic diseases, especially like diabetes, because they are associated with excess iron deposition in tissues. So, yeah. And also, by the way, anybody listening to this hasn't heard, iron deficiency is not usually a problem of iron. It is a problem of the factors that regulate iron, like vitamin A and vitamin D. By the way, you heard that podcasts will become very profitable in 2025. You should consider producing podcasts that might pay off and spread the word. I know. I don't know, Mike. I don't like people enough to make a podcast. It would basically just be having people on to tell them why they're wrong. And I don't know if that would be that entertaining. Maybe it would be. I do not like debate. I do not care if people listen to me or believe me. That is not on my list of priorities. So I part of like debate podcasts are like that, and I just don't give a shit. Aaron, very low body hair indicates what? Well, it doesn't really indicate anything, Aaron. That would just probably be more relevant to like your particular genetics. Yeah, I wouldn't be concerned about that at all. It is what it is. I did have somebody mention once a very long time ago on social media that they saw a thickness in their beard increase after following my work. So there's things like that that probably could happen, but I wouldn't worry too much about body hair. Is pork, beef, lamb, or chicken a risk factor for parasites? Well, yeah, if you don't cook it right, cooking thoroughly kills parasites. It's really funny too because we think of our food systems as being clean, but like our entire ancestry before industrial food systems ate parasite infected food all the time and didn't even know that they were eating them. You know, they're just part of the meat that you were eating. It's not that they're like good or bad or anything like that. I have had really stupid people. There's people out there that currently think that parasites are good for you, which is like the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. But anyway, thinking that the meat in our food supply is especially clean. It's cleaner than it did when we were hunter gatherers, but it's definitely still going to have pathogens in it, which is why you have to cook it. But okay, I should end soon because I am getting dried out. I didn't bring water with me to the table. But I'll finish these last questions and then we'll call it a day. Is it watermelon that can address this or just oral pathogens? Oh, sorry, address what, Mike? I forget what. Do you mean? What did you mean by can watermelon address? Silicon, or I don't know what you mean by that. I lost what message you were connecting that to. Giardia. No. Resistance to pathogens. Resistance to parasites is dependent on a well-functioning immune system, dietary iodine and cyanide, vitamin C, adequate hormone production. Believe it or not, progesterone is actually anti-parasitic. Because most parasites that colonize our tissues, maybe not Giardia, but the ones that colonize our actual tissues that use our body for reproduction, they're dependent on estrogen. And if you have sufficient progesterone, you're much more resistant to them, actually. And that's one of the reasons why supplemental progesterone, like I recommend so much in my books, helps a lot of people with these illnesses, especially like cancer and things like that. And it helped me when I got better, was because it's actually anti-parasitic. But immune system, your good immune function, for addressing, especially like dietary cyanide. But just to be clear about that too, just in case I accidentally lead anyone astray, that dietary cyanide does not work to kill parasites by poisoning them with cyanide. That is not how that works. If you take high amounts of cyanide, you will kill yourself too. The way that cyanide works in our immune system is it works in our immune system just like iodine, where our immune system uses cyanide and iodine as substrates to produce hypothiocyanate and hypoiodous acids, or what's the general word for them? That left my mind. I don't remember. I've been talking too long. You have to have a working immune system for something like cyanide to help your body resist parasites. It's not just a function of cyanide toxicity. So don't just like go take a bunch of it. You have to know how it's working to do that. So yeah, the invert recipe I mentioned is exactly the recipe for syrup used in most Arabic desserts. Oh, really, Jamal? I did not know that. That's cool. Yeah, a lot of people I've met people before that just have like invert sugar sitting around to add to their tea and coffee. Yeah, and so all you need is water, sugar, and acid, and boil it for like 10 minutes. But I did not know that it was a traditional recipe. That's really cool. Yeah, it's really great. It's actually therapeutic because when we lose the ability to digest sugar, that actually becomes a therapy, is to actually use invert sugar or to accompany it with tannin too to help promote inhibit the pathogens and stuff that suppress it. So that's really cool though. You just usually see, actually Jamal, it's really funny too, because one of the people that I coach, she is of Pakistani origin, and I was telling her about the use of milk tea in order to actually harvest vitamin K and oxalate from tea into milk to help better metabolize the calcium. And apparently, India and Pakistan, that's how they've all just been making their tea for, I don't know, the last several hundred or thousand years. That's how they have tea, is in milk already. They already do that. They don't actually prepare the tea generally in only water like we do here in the West, which is a product of British appropriation of that stuff. So actually, they've been doing it all the whole time, and we're just rediscovering that here. Aaron, you usually see people with nice body hair. They have nice, healthy skin too, and seem healthy and attractive. Yeah, well, yeah, and Aaron, that's just because when you're free of pathogenic colonization, all your systems work great. You know, the nutrients can get where they need to go. Your hormones are balanced. There's no one thing that you do to fix that. You just need to generally improve your immune system, your thyroid, get sun exposure, fix your gut, have a good diet, you know, all of those things. And hormones play a big role in it too. That's why I tell people a lot of time to take pregnenolone as a supplement, because that helps to make up for the dysregulation in your normal hormone function too. There's kind of a warning with it. It's not dangerous, but when you take pregnenolone and progesterone is the hormone of empathy, and which is why women can get so weepy when they experience their cycle every month, is because a high amount of progesterone makes you very, very emotionally sensitive. When I took progesterone for therapy for my cancer, I had the same thing. I felt extremely emotionally sensitive all the time. And when you take pregnenolone, it will just naturally also convert into normal amounts of progesterone. And if you're naturally predisposed to depression, you can mistake using those hormones, the increase in emotional sensitivity, as a negative development, when in fact it actually is a positive development. And the problem is just that you don't like your feelings, and you need to learn to have compassion for yourself and patience with yourself, instead of avoiding those things, because it's actually good for you to have feelings. I know avoiding not having feelings can actually be fairly convenient, but actually, like, disliking your feelings is actually is a symptom of unresolved trauma that you can address by doing inventory and things like that. Having compassion and patience for yourself. So yeah. Okay, I've got to go. Last ones. You had a wonderful South Indian dish of veggies and chopped roti. Did I mention arsenic in rice water? No, I haven't. But I mean, unless it's like added. But if it's something that occurs naturally and stuff like that, I wouldn't worry about that. Chopped roti and was satiating to an unbelievable degree. Fun. Oh, yummy. Yeah, I love Indian food. It's so complex to make. I don't have it a lot, but that's one thing I miss about Los Angeles, is it was like there was such good food everywhere. So much Indian restaurants to choose from. Reversing forehead wrinkles. I can't get into that this time here, and that's a lot. That's quite a complex topic. We'll do that next time. Hey, thank you everyone for coming and hanging out and chatting. This was actually really nice. Sorry for the technical difficulties. Thank God it didn't happen again. That was actually nice. We got 2 hours in here. If you're not subscribed to my social media stuff, subscribe here, like and comment. That helps promote visibility. Go to my Blue Sky address. It's listed in the about on this channel. If you want to interact with me on a Twitter-like platform, my Instagram, get my books. Also, actually, a lot of people, I suggested on my Patreon, and also you can go to my Patreon if you like and support there too. I suggested that people spread my guide for alcoholism and addiction recovery since it's the New Year's, and a lot of people might have probably overdone the holidays and felt shitty about it. And recovery isn't that hard, and it can make it. And I'm not abstinent. I drink a few times a year. I would drink a lot more if I had a life, like I talked about earlier in the stream. But you can fix those problems. If you feel like your life is dependent on drugs or smoking or drinking, and you can address those, and pretty easily too. All you have to do is learn about it and put in the work, and it's not that difficult. Certainly less difficult than what I was doing before I got sober. But yeah, so share that around if you guys know people that need help. You can say, hey, this guy knows what you're going through. Yeah. Anyway, Happy New Year to you all, and thank you